Bonjour et
Welcome to
bienvenue à
Tunis for
Tunis
the
pour
France
l'entretien
24
de
interview.
France
We are
24.
here in Tunis at the seat of the Tunisian government with the Prime Minister of Tunisia, Mr. Hamadi Jebali. Mr. Jebali, good morning.
Bonjour.
My first
Ma
question
première
is the following.
question.
Who is
Qui
currently
gouverne
governing
la
Tunisia, and
Tunisie
why
et
are we
pourquoi
hearing
toutes
so many
ces
contradictory
déclarations
statements from members of
contradictoires
government?
de la part des membres du gouvernement?
Welcome to France 24 and its viewers. Who governs Tunisia? The people has elected government and the Constituent Assembly. The government, the people has elected the President of the Republic as well. Now who governs? Well, the government governs in Tunisia, the head of the government, obviously. The government governs and no one else. Now, other parties that form the three-party troika then have their own ministers, but the Council of Ministers takes the decisions.
Now, by way of example, the date of the legislative elections has been set, and now we hear that one member of the Constituent Assembly states that that date needs to be postponed. Now, does that express the view of the government?
Before the revolution, a man governed, took the decisions, and nobody could contradict him. You talked about the elections. Well, as I've always stated, the Constituent Assembly, when it drafts the Constitution at that time, we will move towards elections. The President of the Constituent Assembly has stated that that process will be completed by the 20th of March, and we supported that move. Now, will the Constituent Assembly fulfill its promise? Well, the Assembly will decide and the parties comprising will decide. No one can decide outside of the institutions. There may be comments and misgivings on the dates. That's normal because we are in a democracy today. And everyone is free to express his or her views. The decision lies with the institutions under the Constituent Assembly.
Now, many citizens and political parties consider that as of October the 23rd, this government will no longer be legitimate. How do you feel about that?
Let's not overstate the case. The people has elected the Constituent Assembly to draft the Constitution. It has also elected a government to oversee
That's
the
a decision
process.
for the Constituent Assembly to make.
It's an agreement, if you will, between the parties. The Tunisian people has elected the Constituent Assembly with a view to then fulfill that task. It's not elected for 1 year. Everyone knows that the Constituent Assembly is at work, is making progress. Those who state that or who claim that it is illegitimacy, that it is illegitimate and beyond that date, then we are going to work flat out to meet our undertakings. The Constituent Assembly is working flat out to that end. Its meetings are broadcast live, and we now know anyone who does obstruct that process, with God's will, we will now complete the drafting of the Constitution before the 24th.
Now, you promised to the Tunisian people a cabinet reshuffling. Now, what are you waiting for to go through with that reshuffling?
That reshuffling will go ahead. Times have changed. We have our institutions today. Some people are still waiting. We don't want change for the sake of change.
But has the work of your ministers been assessed yet?
We will assess everyone's work and efforts and take adequate steps to rectify negative points. At that time, that reshuffling will be meaningful and produce an impact. We will not reshuffle simply at this or that person's request. We will reshuffle the government in the interest of the country, then so that it is more effective.
Now, many people feel that the government is carrying out its work under considerable pressure from the UGGT, the Tunisian Workers' General Union.
The government acts under pressure. Nobody can deny that fact.
So you're taking one step forward and two steps back?
Not quite. The government is acting under pressure. Everyone is reacting to events as they occur, but we're not acting under pressure then of some union within the union. People know that. No one can exert pressure outside of our democratic process.
One does get the feeling, however, that the government has had to make considerable concessions.
With regard to the union, the results we've achieved then are in the interests of the country. If we give way, it's in the interests of Tunisia. If that union gives way, it is in the interest of the country, as I've just said. So it's a consensus. The negotiations are being conducted not with a view to concessions. This is a normal democratic process, then as part of the process of accountability with a view to striking then that consensus. Now turning to CFAX. A group of individuals closed that hospital for 3 months. That caused a number of problems. The law intervened then to restore law and order. Those individuals were arrested and accused, and those individuals were then asked their victims to forgive them. The security personnel and the latter withdrew their grievances. That's when the court took that into account and decided freely, of its own free volition, without then the state intervening. We refuse state intervention in this type of matter. Thereafter, the court took that into account, and the case is currently ongoing. This is a victory for justice, a victory for democracy. We refuse that public services be tampered with and interfered with. And that should be clear to one and all. We have shown then in CFAX that we will not compromise on our rights.
Pressed for time, I'd like to touch upon the condition of women in the famous Article 28. Ennahda did promise to uphold the personal statutes of women. Has that stance changed today?
Regarding Ennahda, as head of the government, that issue concerns Ennahda, and as such, that movement has always asserted since 1981 that it supports that code and its provisions, and that it wishes to develop them. We are committed to that out of conviction and not acting under pressure. These are the principles we hold dear to. Legality between citizens.
But many citizens seem to think you have a hidden agenda.
There is no hidden agenda. Some people defend their positions under the principle of democracy and freedom of expression within Ennahda, but Ennahda and the government's position is to protect rights and entitlements. Let's stop this stern agitation for no purpose.
Were you shocked by the statements that were made regarding the dress of an Olympic medalist in London, one of your athletes?
I was taken aback and saddened by the statements that reflect a lack of clarity and lucidity. We should have thanked Abibidi Lagribi for what she did to represent Tunisian women and the Tunisian revolution, the Tunisian woman that we wish to hold in the highest regard.
President Marzouki is still pushing for an extradition of Mr. Ben Ali. What do you feel about that?
We will continue to review that request.
Mr. Hamadi Jebali, Prime Minister of Tunisia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. Goodbye.